Well, welcome to the In Pursuit podcast. I'm Deon Garrett. I'm your host, and this is a podcast for people who, kind of like me, are trying to figure out how to live a fuller, more whole life. And today with me, I've got a guest, a friend of mine, Scott Morris. And Scott, you're here because you've done something pretty significant with your life path, your career. We'll get into that in a minute, but why don't you start off by telling us what you do? You work at University of Missouri St. Louis. Something in entrepreneurship? What's the role?
I do, yeah. I have kind of there's two parts to my role. I'm a professor, so I'm an assistant teaching professor. I teach strategy and entrepreneurship. And then I also have a community-facing role. I'm the director of the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Center, where we work with small businesses in the community. We provide them education, resources. And I'm sure we'll get into this, but my background, my dissertation was on how to scale small businesses. And so it's a perfect fit. It is absolutely a God-inspired, there's no way anybody could have created this pathway for me. It is absolutely a God thing.
It is amazing to see how it's come together, just because you and I have been talking about this for a few years and just watching parts of this unfold and where you've landed. And it's like God was preparing you for this without clarity of exactly what it would be. It was just like, this is where he was inclining your heart and directing your steps. And it's been pretty amazing.
Literally down to creating the job opening at the exact moment that I was finishing up my degree. So it's just unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. And today, what I want to dive into is there's this concept it actually comes from Hinduism, and it's the ashramas. So it was a thing I learned a few years ago, and I became really fascinated with it. And I've actually searched to see, has there ever been anything in Christian theology? And I need a historical theologian to really dive into this for me. But has there ever been anything like this in Christian theology? Because I think it's really, really smart. Mm-hmm. The four ashramas are these like four phases of life. And you start off with as being a student, and then you're a householder. And it's the phase of life where you're trying to earn, you're trying to take care of people, you're raising up kids, you're taking care of elderly parents. Like your role in life is to make a lot of money and to support the people that need you.
And a lot of responsibilities. Yeah, right.
Yeah. And then you move into this, the third ashrama, which is, I've heard it translated different ways from Sanskrit. Like I've heard like forest walker or something.
Living in the forest. You retire to the forest, yeah.
Yeah, and you start to go deeper into this, inner journey, the spiritual work. You don't need all the stuff of the world anymore. And then the final ashrama being renunciation, of just really trying to let go of all the stuff of the world.
Yeah, the wise old man on the hill.
Yeah. And that's been such an interesting concept for me, because if we compare that to how most of us think about life here in the West, you have the student phase, yes, you go through university or whatever you do to get a job, and then you work, earn until the day you might retire, and then you hope you don't run out of money as you spend down. And so there's this very different, it's a little more linear view of life. And I see that as, I personally see it as boring and kind of problematic, and I'm not sure it's fully compatible with like what God has in mind for us. So that's just by way of introduction. And you're a guy who has really, in my opinion, embraced this philosophy. So why don't we back up and talk about your earlier life and your early career trajectory, and just kind of young man Scott,
sure,
like what he was dreaming about and what he was thinking about for his life.
Yeah, well, if you're talking about career-wise, then, as we were talking off camera here, I actually thought I was going to go to law school when I was an undergrad. And so I was a political science major, but I had a minor in international business. And I'm sure we all know people that have these very weird skills. One of my very weird skills is I can pick up foreign languages very quickly.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And so it's
easy.
This odd thing. My middle son has it too. He's just very astute with it. Yeah. And so it's something I really enjoyed, but it also kind of led to this curiosity about the bigger world. And so I wanted a job in international business. I finished up, I graduated kind of off cycle. I graduated in December from undergrad.
Yeah.
And I went to see my career center and said, I want to, this is in the 90s, right? Before cell phones and internet and laptops and things like that. And I said, I want a job in international business. And they said, well, typically you're going to have 10, 15 years of experience before you even get a whiff of it. And I'm like, well, that's not going to work for me. So I kind of networked around and found a Japanese company that was headquartered their U.S. headquarters was in New York City. And so I was one of, I think, 3 Americans that worked for the company at the time. And so I moved to New York City, spent my first 6 years there. And I think they let me take care of domestic customers for about the first year. And then at the age of 23, they just sent me to travel the world. We had offices in 50 or 60 different countries around the world. And so I would go post up in one of these countries and work with the locals, and we would kind of compare notes. So, nowadays you would call that, I don't know, business development probably, but it involved a lot of negotiating where we would negotiate exclusive supply agreements. We would take minority interests. So we would invest in these companies, but we'd always take a minority partnership. And it was enough exposure to what later became a career in corporate development, which had a lot of mergers and acquisitions in it. But I had no idea. I can make it sound like it was very thoughtful and it was this well-orchestrated plan, but the truth of the matter is it was just pure dumb luck every step of the way. But yeah, I did a lot of, it kind of led to this long career in private equity, mergers and acquisitions. Probably half of the jobs that I had over international responsibility, and the other half was, purely domestic.
Yeah, I think when I first met you, you were still doing a lot of international travel.
Probably so. Yeah, it's kind of like every other one. That's the other thing with that is, what I did was not a career. It was a series of jobs, because if I'm doing my job well, we transact, we sell the business in 3 to 5 years, and you're usually a day one casualty. So the acquiring company usually doesn't want you to stick around, and so you get terminated. It's all good. They pay you quite well to do it.
It's part of the deal.
Yeah. And the flip side of it is if you don't do your job well, you're also going to get fired. So it's this pattern of just continual, job search. You do your job for 3 to 5 years, you sell the business, and then you move on to the next company and kind of rinse and repeat.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was a lot of stress.
Yeah. High stress.
It was a lot of working with private equity folks, which, I worked for some great ones, but there's always this sword of Damocles hanging over your head, right? That like, hey, we've got 3 years to figure this out. And if you don't, they all want to get to $1 billion in revenue. So we'd start with a platform company that was maybe 100 or 250 million in sales. And I'm the trigger man. I'm the guy that has to develop the strategy and then execute the acquisitions that get us to $1 billion. And that way we can either sell to another competing company or do an initial public offering or IPO. And so they want that dual path for the exit. And it was great, but 30 years of it really took a toll on my marriage, my health, my, everything. And so, yeah, it was, I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Yeah,
but
what did you like about it? Like, what was your favorite? Was it the travel? Do you like the pace of doing lots of different things and having a reset every 2 or 3 years?
So to me, it was the strategy piece of it. Okay. Like you are face of the coal mine, developing the strategy. And so I always like to describe it as, if you had sales, the sales team was deployed, 0 to 12 months. Their focus was 0 to 12, maybe 18 months. The marketing team was kind of a little bit beyond that. Maybe, they're planning for the next year to 3 years. And then I'm everything past that. And so, we're really thinking long-term strategy, really high level, corporate development. You're developing and transforming the corporation. So that deep strategy piece and the problem solving was great. And of the acquisitions that I did over the course of my career, probably half of them would report to me for a period of time. So we would you couldn't hire a division president for some small business that has all these cultural issues, and it's probably the same. The founders are still involved. Yeah. And so I was the person that would be responsible for kind of cleaning it up, getting some basic business practices in there. And then once we got them to a certain size, then we could attract the real talent to take it and run it well. But I liked the mess. I liked the strategy. I liked the cleanup, the harder the problem, kind of the more interesting it was to me. So I really enjoyed that piece of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you said after 30 years, it's stressful, there's a lot of layers. When did you start saying, oh, I'm not going to do this until 65, 67, there's something else for me?
Yeah. So there were, I would say the seminal kind of event was we moved to St. Louis in 2001 and joined at that time St. John. And I got involved in a Bible study group. At the time, we were calling them Iron Man, and we read a book called Halftime.
They're back, by the way. And we're calling them Iron Man.
I know. Well, mine has never quit, so I'm still in the same group. Yeah, but we've just since called it Bible study. So, but yeah, we're still the original Iron Man team. And we read a book called Halftime. And it's not like the greatest book in the world, I would say, but there was a really profound concept in there where he talks about having two careers. Your first is focused on success and your second is focused on significance. And that just pierced my soul because I was starting to feel like a hired gun. Like, I'm just kind of doing the same thing again and again. And all I'm really doing is helping these really wealthy people just get a little bit more wealthy. Yeah. It was definitely taking a toll on my physical health. It was definitely pushing my marriage to places I didn't want it to go. It was causing a lot of, it was very rewarding and very satisfying, but it was starting to fracture and crack a little bit. And simultaneously, I was really thinking about retirement. I had seen my father retire and my uncles retire. And then I just watched people and I'm like, that's not really what I want in retirement. I don't see myself just stopping and I don't know that that's a great thing for your mental health. Yeah. And I really enjoy work and I like being around, people that kind of challenge you with different ideas and learning. And so I was really thinking about that. So that two career path, the success and significance really struck me. And that's when I started thinking about what do I want to do for a second act?
And so, that started, you said early 2000s.
Yeah, I'd say, I was in my mid 30s, maybe something like that.
Okay. So you're already thinking about that.
Yeah.
How did it go from there? We're a lot of years later and you're in the last couple of years, you're in this new spot.
Yeah.
What was the period of discovery like, or did you figure it out right away and you were just biding your time until the timing was right? What did that look like?
Yeah. So, I had to really think about what are the pieces of my work life that give me the deepest satisfaction. And it was always building a team. So the one nice thing about my job is usually I would come in and my function just didn't exist. And so you would get to bring together a team. And then when I would get to run these small businesses for a period of time, as we were integrating them and trying to scale them, I would pull together, oftentimes you'd have a number of people. And the other thing that really took a toll on me was you had to terminate a lot of people. And so that starts to weigh on you, as well. It just is not something that anyone would embrace and want to do a lot of. And I had to do an awful lot of that. But the good thing is that you got to reset. And so you got to bring in the right skill set, the right kind of people. And, so many so much of the way I would approach that was biblically informed. And so I always thought of it as, since Pathfinder has taught us about, the Enneagram and given us other useful tools that I wish I would have had back then, but I was always thinking of it as fruits of the Spirit. And so you're wanting to pull together these people that have different skills, not that look like you, think like you, act like you. You want it to be a jigsaw puzzle where you're trying to put the right piece in the right place. And so I loved building these teams. And then as time would go on, you'd get calls. Probably one of the most rewarding things is have your kids compliment you, say, "Dad, you did a really great job with this. Thanks so much." And the same thing was true with employees. So if I had an employee that went on to do something great, you'd occasionally get that phone call where they, would express thanks that you really meant something to them. Yeah. And I had so many coaches and mentors and teachers that did that for me. And so I was like, boy, that would be a great way to
You're like,
spend the
I
second
love
half
that.
of life.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's great.
You work hard to kind of show the next person. And as you know, I'm so passionate about the next generation. And I spent years, working in core or teaching kids in the kids ministry here. And so I just
You really
love
have.
that
Yeah.
next generation concept. And so I'm like, boy, that's where I really want to spend my time. I'm going to go back and be a teacher. And at first I thought, I'll go do this at the high school level and maybe I can coach baseball or something like that. And then I realized as my kids kind of got into high school, you got to deal with all the parents. So
That's right.
no way am I
That's
doing
right.
that. I am not cut out for that. So I started thinking about the higher education levels and going into college. And so this process took probably, 10 years to really kind of navigate the path that I ultimately chose. And I met a guy as I was networking around to figure out how do you become a college professor. I met a guy, and it was a high school friend of mine introduced me to him. And he was a teacher at UMSL. And he told me, we had lunch one day. First time I'd ever met him. And he told me, he goes, don't be the guy that stands up in front of the classroom telling war stories that's, in a way, just kind of patting yourself on the back, talking about how smart and how great you were. Really do this right. Go back and get a degree, learn what it means to research, learn how to teach, and then go into the classroom. Don't just try to roll it out there and talk about all the brilliant strategies that you had when you were working. And so when I turned 50, I started, we were starting to become empty nesters. I think 2 of the 3 boys were out of the house. And I went back to UMSL to get my doctorate. And in 22 or 23, January of 23, the company that I was working for at the time, we had a tough break through COVID. The business really suffered through COVID. And so the CEO called me up in January and said, hey, I didn't want to catch you before the Christmas holidays, but, what would you think about maybe we call it quits? And I was like, well, funny you should call. I would love to talk to you about negotiating kind of an exit. And so it worked out. So at 53 or 52 years old, I was just about to finish my doctorate, and they offered me a package to leave the company. I wasn't doing anything anyway, so I felt like I was kind of stealing at that point, and it worked out great. So I kind of burned the ships and said, I'm leaving the corporate path. And I finished up my degree, and I think I defended my dissertation on a Wednesday, and then on a Friday, I didn't even know that this job existed at UMSL, and on that Friday they offered me the position. So I'm telling you, man, it was a total God thing.
Yeah. So that is amazing. I want to back up to a couple of things. So first 10 years to try to figure out to have this sense of, oh, this isn't for me forever.
Right.
To finding the next thing. That sounds like a long time. How did that feel for you? Did it feel like a long time, or was it tolerable? Did you still love what you were doing and you're just such a planner and a strategist that you're way ahead of the curve? Because I can imagine having the realization of like, oh, this isn't wearing on me well. Or I don't know if I can do this forever. And then to do that for 10 more years, that seems like a long time.
Well, I did it for probably 15 or so more.
So even longer.
But it took me a 10 to figure out what I wanted, what my next move was going to be.
Yeah.
So no, I would say, I just devoured books during that period of time. I read anything that I could I think I'm the only person that's actually read this, it's the longest longitudinal study ever done of the 3 different groups. I'm sure you know
the Harvard one about like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I've read that. It's about 1,000 pages or so. And I've read it cover to cover, took notes. And it was put together in a book called Aging Well. And the key takeaway there were, if a person will do these 3 of these 7 things, you will have the highest level of happiness and satisfaction and feel purpose in life. And so I'm like, okay, that's the word I'm looking for, is purpose. What is my purpose? And then I've discovered Arthur Brooks. And so the ashrama concept came to me through his book, Strength to Strength. So I just devoured everything like that on kind of second half of life, purpose. Clayton Christensen has a book called How Will You Measure Your Life? So, there's probably a dozen of them or so that I read that were just very informational,
Yeah.
and kind of advised. And so I was just contemplating what that thing was. And I never lost interest in what I was doing. There were times that I liked it less than others. But I never was trying to hurry the process along. And it was interesting. I don't know that had I not gotten that call from the CEO and had she not asked if I would take an exit package, I might still be sitting there.
Yeah.
So I also kind of feel like that was a gift and a blessing just to be shoved out into to taking the step. Because I had I been left to my own volition, I'm not quite sure I would have gotten to that step. I don't know that I would have had the courage to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much there. I think there are a lot of people, and the reason that 10 or 15 years seems like a long time is because I think there are a lot of people who at some point, and Arthur Brooks talks about this and from strength to strength, and just even the way our brains change as we age, and the kinds of intelligence, how our intelligence shifts from, was it fluid to crystallized?
Exactly,
I'm not sure
right.
what the terms were. And so I think there are a lot of people who are sensing like, oh, I don't know that I can do this forever, or that I want to, or that I can suffer the consequences of this. It was fine for a little while, but this isn't going to carry me through. But that period of trying to figure out, well, what next?
Yeah.
Especially when you're good at it, or if it's lucrative, or even if it's not, just trying to figure out like, what else can I do when you've been doing something for a little while?
Right.
I think is a really, really hard thing to figure out. And so I love I both love and hate. I love that you took a long time and you really learned a lot, and you really, learned about, the data out there, and probably learned a lot about yourself in that, in that period. For anyone who feels like they're in that place where you were 15, 20 years ago, and just is starting to have the inkling, or maybe it's even more than an inkling of just like, I can't do this forever, but I don't know what to do next.
Yeah.
Would your advice be to what? Like read a lot of those books, talk to people, what?
Yeah, I mean, that's what worked for me. Nowadays, there's so many ways to consume that information. You can get it through podcasts or TED Talks, YouTube videos. So I would definitely seek out that type of information. But the other thing that's really useful is I start simultaneous, or in addition to reading, I was talking to as many people as I could just about like, what would a next step look like? And I talked to financial planners. I talked to, folks that were in the industries that I had interest in. So I talked to, my kids' high school teachers. I would grab them during parent-teacher conferences and be like, hey, would you just have a chat about what does a typical day look like? What do you love about your job? What do you not love about your job? And so for me, it was casting about and really figuring that out. So have those conversations. Don't be afraid of it. And it's funny, once I took the step, my really close friends were like, we've been listening to you talk about this for literally 20 years. I can't believe you actually did it. And it does take a lot of courage, so you need to tell people about it as kind of accountability partners. And so that wasn't my intent when I was having these conversations with people. I wasn't trying to create an accountability partner, but it was a de facto, like, boy, you've really put this out there, I'm not going to let you not see that through. And so talk to people, consume information, but really, and start to think about it. I mean, for me, I was just running way too hot. And so I knew that there was going to be a crash if I didn't do something. Hopefully for other people, it's not quite that way, but to look for that next thing as opposed to like, I just have to quit and now I'm going to figure it out. I feel like that might be, I personally wouldn't have handled that well. That's probably too much pressure. I needed a plan before I got there.
Yeah. And that's a concept that came from one of those books, because you've passed on a lot of those books to me and we've read some of the same stuff. And I'm a huge fan of Arthur Brooks also. And that may have been a halftime thing. Like plan for like the curves, like plan for your next curve
before you get there. Yeah. Before you get to the apex. Yeah.
You kind of feel like, okay, I've crested in this career path. I feel like, okay, this is satisfying. I've gotten to where I can. I'm not sure I can do this forever. That's the time before you're like, I'm so done. I'm so burnt out. I can't do this another day.
Right.
It's sensing that you've just kind of crested, that you should start to think really about what's next and planning for it and laying the steps for whatever that next thing
Yeah,
is.
100%. That's definitely a halftime concept.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad you're here to remember where things come from. To me, it's all just it's all good stuff. And I can't remember where it comes from. I remember when you first talked to me about what you were planning, thinking about, like, I felt scared for you.
I'm still scared.
I just was like, oh my gosh, because you're good at what you did and before, and you had success, and like, I've talked to other people who in this, I'm going to go sell everything and open up a restaurant.
Yeah.
And, you're like, oh gosh, please don't. Like,
Right.
restaurants fail left and right, like,
Right.
and you're going to be chained to it. But we get those escapist dreams sometimes. And while I think those escapist dreams come from a place that we should listen to, of like, okay, what's wrong that I'm dreaming about escaping?
Right.
But to just kind of take an escapist dream of, I'm going to sell everything and, start a business and, run a food truck, and isn't that going to be great?
Right.
Well, you should probably talk to some people, a lot of people,
Yeah.
and maybe spend a week in a food truck to see.
Yeah, exactly.
But I remember for you, and you're such a methodical, thoughtful, strategic guy, but I still just remember being like, I get it, but oh my gosh, are you sure?
Well, so, through Pathfinder's teachings, I have learned that I'm an Enneagram 5. So I live my life in fear, like everything I do, which is so funny. When I tell people that, they're like, you
don't
live
seem
in
afraid
fear?
of anything.
Yeah, no, right. Yeah. And I do have kind of an outsized personality when it comes to certain things. And, I'm very convicted in a lot of my beliefs, but truly, one of the things I'm most afraid of is running out, right?
Yeah.
And so being a
that's
provider,
a big 5 thing. Yep.
yeah, being a provider, it was always around money. I was always afraid, like, I can't provide my kids the life that I want them to have. I can't provide my wife with the lifestyle that kind of is reflective of how deeply I love her.
Yeah.
And so I was just constantly afraid. And so as a result of that, I made some good financial decisions along the way, and we had gotten ourselves into a position where, we could have a comfortable retirement, whether this works out or not. And so that also helped give me the courage to take the step. I don't know that I could have done it without that. And I've learned that even though having made this transition, I'm still the same person. So I still, this is supposed to be a 20, 30 hour a week job. I have found a way to turn it into 40 plus hours a week.
Yeah.
I still worry that I'm not doing a good enough job, and still have those, I still have the same level of fear. I've just directed it into a different career, but the stress level is very different. My cortisol was just off the charts in my corporate days.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're just constantly, worried about, like, is this deal going to get done? Am I really impacting positively the next 5 years of this company, or did I blow it? And, you're making these life and death feeling decisions about the life of the corporation and the people that you're managing. You're responsible for them. And did I just blow it for them?
Well, and that's not only coming from you in your own head. I mean, you got people around you who are
constantly reminding me of it. Yeah. Like, you blew it. Yeah. And so, you just live on this edge, and now the stress is just hectic stress. There's a lot of, and the cultural things, like, I am used to working at I started my career and spent 7 years in New York City, and then a lifetime working for private equity. So we were on the clock, moving, and then you go into academia where you just hit the mud. And so it's like, oh, I got to really tone it down. Like, I realize I have to change my approach and my personality, but I don't want to compromise who I am either. And so there's a different level of stress that's involved there. But yeah, it's, to me, thinking about it and having enough comfort to actually take the risk, was a big part of the decision too.
Yeah. And I love, and I think this just bears repeating, that for you, this wasn't as much about, I've got to run away from the career that I have. There was a sense of, like, okay, I don't think I can stay here. This is for me forever. Right. And again, Arthur Brooks talks a ton about why in certain careers just are almost impossible. Yeah. Just the way your brain changes.
Right.
They're almost impossible to hold on to for the rest of your life. And you really you really should think about shifting if you're in one of those careers to a different kind of thing. But there's, like an old saying that in the church that you should never take, you should never take a call to another church because you're taking a call from, to get away from a place. It should always be because you feel a strong call to whatever's next. It's not about like, I'm done here and I need to get out. Where's the life preserver? You should always have a sense of like, no, I really think this is where God is calling me to. And so I think for you, that's part of your story that I think is really healthy.
Yeah.
And so for anyone else who's in this place, I want to reiterate that you took a long time to figure out what do I feel like God is calling me to? What am I gifted to do? You had a lot of conversations, read a lot of books, you did a lot of exploration.
Talked to my wife a lot, talked to our financial planners, so this was a collective decision. And the other thing that was important, not to cut you off there, but the other thing that was important is one of my goals was I never want to retire. Like I don't want, I want to keep my mind active, and I like being around the younger generation. And I like, when you see, when I hear someone say these kids today, or like, oh, this generation, I think Doug Moss did a sermon on, he put these quotes up that were hundreds or thousands of years old, but you wouldn't have known it. Right. And it's the same, it's the
complaining
same,
about this new generation,
you wicked generation. Yeah. And I never want to be that person. I never want to be that grumpy old man that's, you kids and your rock and roll or, whatever it is. And so I'm intrigued with like, why do you think that? And and the only way to know that is to be around younger people. And so I'm like, wow, this is a constant pipeline of new thinking and young thoughts. And so I think that will keep me young and from being that bitter, grumpy old man that, thinks the music is too loud and the politics are too leftist or whatever it is.
Right.
And so I just have a curiosity and want to remain relevant and around younger people and work for as long as my health will allow and as long as works for Gretchen and I.
It also strikes me that there are some people who, you think about the founder, the CEO who will not let go.
Right.
You could even say that about some in the political establishment right now.
Sure.
You're like, oh, hey, this might be time for you to do something else and to make room for someone else, but they won't let go.
Yeah.
And that's in your thing. That's not what you were doing. You were looking, hey, I don't think I'm a person who just wants to retire and play golf or, brunch and then lunch and then have an early dinner and go to bed.
Right.
But for you leaned into a different kind of work that would suit the season, or back to the ashrama concept,
right?
That would be fulfilling or would suit the season that you would be in. And so that really focused on taking some of and Brooks talks a lot about this, taking some of the things that you've learned and the ability to kind of crystallize or mesh those things together, and to be helpful to other people.
Right.
And this mentoring thing is, so just talk to me more about that, about how you're finding instead of all the high stakes business transactions, and building teams. You said that along the way, but focus more on this teaching mentoring thing.
It totally is just kind of a mentoring, and you're right. And so so he talks about the ashrama is broken up into 25-year chunks. And so just because there are 4 of them doesn't mean that you will live to see all 4. Yeah. So it's just pure coincidence that, it happened in my early 50s that I kind of took that hard step into the 3rd ashrama, which is whatever it is, the forest one, where you're kind of available, but you're only available if people come to seek you. And so, and I've noticed that even in the 18 months or so that I've been in the classroom teaching, is it takes at least a semester to develop a relationship with a student. And then slowly, and it's like with your kids, the more you preach, the more advice you kind of shove into them, the more resistant they are to it. But if you offer advice, wisdom, whatever it is, a little bit of teaching or education, and then they start to ask follow-up questions, that's what you want. That's what you're looking for. And so it very much is that. And Arthur Brooks talks about the crystallized intelligence, that your ability is to synthesize.
Yeah. That's the word I was looking for earlier. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know the right tool to use at the right time. Mm-hmm. So if you think of business, or what I kind of did is, I'm a general contractor. You can have any kind of house you want, but I need to understand what your vision is, what you want this job to do, what the artistic design is. And then it's my job to figure out which tools to pull out of the toolbox. But I'm not going to do the work. I'm going to put the tool in someone else's hand. Or, the sports analogy is I'm not going to make the plays, but I know which plays to call, and I can put my players in the best spot to succeed. And so that's the switch that I've made, and not everybody's responsive to it. That's the other thing that's very odd about, or that's been hard to adjust to in academia, where my success rate in the corporate world was really high. I don't have a percentage in mind, but it was, it wasn't 100%, but it was really high. In the classroom, you may have 5 kids that, actually are, interested to the point of wanting to follow up and want to get to know you a little bit better and want to seek your advice on something. So, if you have a classroom of 40 and only, 5 to 10 of them are kind of actively seeking you out, you're like, what am I doing wrong? And then you realize, like, no, this is just kind of how it works. So you do have to step away. It's a great analogy to step away and then let them seek you, because if you're chasing them, trying to shove information in their head, they're just going to resist you and run away more. So that part's been an interesting transition for sure. And so you're available to mentor when wanted is the key.
Mm-hmm. And a big driver for you through all this, I think you said this at the beginning. I'm trying to remember what you said today and what I've heard from you in the past.
Right.
A big driver is seeing people retiring, and that was a cautionary tale to you.
Yeah.
Can you just say more about, I said something at the beginning about how I maybe think we're not doing it the wisest way in the West sometimes when it comes to career and retirement.
Yeah.
What did you see and what?
Well, there's a couple things. So one is, when you retire, a lot of people, and I won't say all people, but and this is just my own, little sample size, so take it for what it's worth, right? But you have a group of friends, and that's wonderful, but they're very similar to you, and so you quit getting the amount of exposure to new ideas, to different ideas, and so you start to live more and more in an echo chamber.
Yeah,
and so you have to. For me, anyway, I that wasn't appealing to me. I like to, and I think that's where, when you get into that echo chamber, I think that's where you start to go down this pathway of the music's too loud,
right.
And these kids today, like, the world's going to hell in a handbasket, and then you lose that perspective. It's like, no, this has always been the world. This is, we can look throughout history that these things have all happened before, but you need to be around it to understand it. And my personal contention is that a lot of the kids today want what the boomers had in terms of a pension, a job, a steady job for, that they could spend their career in. And so they're really seeking those things out. To the boomers, it may look socialistic, but it's really the same thing they
had. Like entitlement and socialism.
Yeah.
And you're like,
And so like, I don't want to lose sight of that.
Thought.
And I have so much hope about this next generation that I just want to be around them and see, what that thought process is. And the other is, financially, I think there's it's very well documented that, people oftentimes struggle when you go from saving to spending, and what you have is what you have. There's nothing else coming in, and so you get very dependent on the Social Security check or the pension check or whatever it is, and that produces your personality can change, and for either of those reasons. And so you switch from that
more of abundance, and there's always more, and I can make more money, to this strict scarcity, which
right.
is terrible for you and
right.
for your spirit and for your faith.
Yeah. So I think it just causes that aging process to happen faster. And so keeping your mind young, kind of delaying that scarcity mindset as much as you can, I think is really important. And those were some of the things that I was seeking.
Yeah. We also know people, and I referenced these people earlier on the flip side, who have so identified with a career, it has become their whole identity. that either they don't want to let go, or when they eventually do let go because their spouse makes them, or health does something, or the board
Right.
forces them out, or whatever it is, they're lost.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, what do you say to people before they're at that point as you're looking ahead? And if you think you're a guy who really liked to work,
Yeah.
and you took a lot of identity for it. I do too. And I take a lot of identity from my work, and I always have. And I imagine that's going to be a hard thing for me. What do you do when you are younger, or you're not to that place yet?
Yeah.
Is it, shouldn't identify at all with your career, or is there a different way to, I guess I'm trying to figure out, like, for people who like work and take a
Yeah.
lot of value from work, how do you do all this stuff?
Well, I mean, I don't know the answer, but I'll tell you my opinion is, and from the research, this Aging Well, and Arthur Brooks talks about it, he kind of reduces the 8, I can't remember, I think it's 7 or 8 different things that longitudinal study came up with.
Mm-hmm.
You need to do 3 of these well in order to be happy. And there's a lot of research that talks about the U curve of life is like your happiness kind of goes down until your mid 40s, which people used to call a midlife crisis. And then it starts to rise, and it'll actually, you finish happier than when you started. So all of that is about purpose. And so your purpose has to be deeper than your job. Your purpose is something much greater. My wife and I were just talking about this, and, so she's just a very kind person. And, I said, if you can take this goal of being kind and turn it into, I'm reflecting Jesus's, love for others, and so I am actually preaching, by being kind to others, whether it's the golden rule, or just any of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus' teachings about loving one another as I have loved you. It's, find that deep purpose, and that's what you're doing. It's not the accomplishment. It's not the financial. It's not how many people are in the congregation, or, but what is the purpose? Like, what is that one person that I deeply connected with? And you have to find that greater purpose, in order to, I think, kind of leave the job behind, and that never leaves you, that you just maybe do it a little bit differently.
I love that, because there's like the thing under the thing. I love to work. I identify with my work, and okay, what is it for you in the corporate world? It was, you discovered it's teams, it's people, it's investing in people, it's helping make a difference in someone's life, where later in life they go, hey, you helped me. That was something you discovered, in my work there. It's certainly not the, it's not all the stress and the demand and the, keeping people happy in a congregation.
Yeah.
I think it's probably something about, I really love to help people ponder meaningful things in their lives. And to think beyond the tyranny of the urgent and the surfacey stuff, to think about what are the ultimate things in life, and to create space for people to actually think about those things. I know in life you don't get to do that. So, I think there's a thing below the thing. And that's great counsel, to just, because the thing below the thing is more either is your purpose or is a step closer to your purpose. And maybe that helps you get I think even in a bad sense, if you're just like, I like being the man in charge or the woman in charge, and, I like, okay, well, like, let's think about that in a more sanctified way. What is it that you really enjoy? Is it just you're a control freak and you love to be in control? Well, maybe that's something you need to pray about.
Yeah. Being in charge isn't a purpose, right?
Right.
It's something more than that. And so, you gotta,
and it may be, I think I have a lot of wisdom.
Yeah.
And I think I make good decisions, or I can help other people make good decisions. Okay. Well, now you're getting to some place that actually, that can follow you all the days of your life.
Sure.
You can actually do that until you die.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, on one side, we're talking about the retirement picture, and I don't know if there was anything else. I'm so far in my mind away from that. I do think about retirement, and I'm like, okay, I got like probably at least 20 years or something before, or 19 years before I can, get to the, the pension, Social Security, retirement age.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about that part of my career, but then I'm also just thinking about, like, what do I do afterward?
Right.
Is there anything else that you would offer people to be planning for a whole life of purpose?
Well,
better?
the in our is that I think it was his next book. I don't think it was Strengthless Strength. I think it was Build the Life You Want, Arthur
Oh yeah.
Brooks's most recent book. He
Yeah, that's
talks
the one
about,
he
there's
did with Oprah, right?
yeah,
She wrote some segments in there. Yeah,
right.
it's good.
He talks about there's four key things: faith, family, friends, and finding something that gives you purpose.
Yeah.
But to just even to your comment, I might have another 20 years left. I had this conversation with a friend. I won't name names, but he was saying, boy, if I have to do 5 years and then I am done, I can't take this anymore. And, so the conversation was, well, what if you found something that you could do for 25 more years?
Yeah.
And, so in your case, maybe it's, 40 more years.
Yeah.
It's, and so, don't work to the point of self-extinction and where you do just, fry yourself. There's a podcast, Arthur Brooks and Jordan Peterson got together on a podcast.
Oh yeah. I saw. I haven't watched or listened to that, but I saw some highlights from it.
Highly recommend it. And they talk about, it's the classic story, and unfortunately I was that classic case, unbeknownst to me. But we see so many people in both of our practices that come in at the age of 49 and they've just had it. They're just fried, and they just it's almost PTSD. And then it's like, now what do I do? I've made all the money that I need, but now what do I do? And it's hollow, and it's a little scary. And I think that is when you struggle. So taking that halftime approach, that as one curve is starting to flatten out, you've kind of reached the pinnacle of success, or you've mastered your craft, so to speak. That's the time that you need to start the next one. And so, and just kind of keep going. So for me, that's what I wanted is to just always have that next horizon, that next mountain to go scale. And so, this is what it looked like. So it's worked out well for me, I'd say, but maybe it's not, maybe that path isn't for everybody.
Well, it's certainly inspiring. And as I've watched you, it's inspired me. And I mean, and I haven't talked a ton about this, but a few years ago, I was at a place where I'm just like, I don't know if I can do this in another few months, let alone even a year, let alone 5 years.
Yeah.
And it was just it was a hard season. And I think there were some things about me that I just needed to change within myself and let go of, and some things that I was holding on to too tightly, and some fear, and, all those things. But I was in this really, really awful place. And I think that's when I started thinking about some of the, if I can't do this anymore, what am I going to do? Because I'm not in a place financially where I'm just like, I could retire early and just, do a hobby job. I'm like, oh no, I'm in the thick of putting kids through college. Like, this is the wrong season. And I don't have we haven't been able to save, or haven't chosen to save, or, whatever, to get all this stuff done. So it's like, I got to work, I got to do this, which is a horrible, horrible feeling.
Yeah.
To feel like I'm stuck, I have no options, but I can't keep doing this. And I'll say this, that as I started to learn more about how to do this in a more healthy way, and even watched some of your example, there was a little bit of stress in me about that, of like, I don't know if I don't have 10 years to figure this out.
Yeah.
I've got to figure this out now. But I think just even exploring that slowed me down, and it got me out of this kind of panicked urgency escapism.
Yeah.
And got me really thinking some deeper thoughts of like, I don't want to jump out of the frying pan into the fire.
Mm-hmm.
That was one thing. So I really need to be thoughtful about whatever it is I would do next if I wasn't going to do what I'm doing. Also, as you said, there's still probably some things that I will take with me that are a part of me that will continue to haunt me and make life difficult for me in whatever I do. And I should probably slow down and take inventory of what those things are, and to see if addressing some of those things now and trying to change myself, or to ask God to change me, if that can bring greater peace and joy into my current phase for however long that lasts. And then you were probably 10 years ago the guy who told me about the U-shaped happiness curve. And that was really comforting at first, to be like, oh, this is why there's nothing wrong with my life other than, at the time, other than I'm 40, like that's what's wrong with my life. I'm just 40. It's not my marriage. It's not my job. It's not my kid. I'm 40. Yeah. Okay. It's hard. And so I don't know, I'm 48 now. And I think I sense like the I feel like I'm coming out of it a little bit. And some of that's the change that I'm letting things go and just shifting into a different mental gear. I heard an interesting podcast the other day about aging. For a long time, we just saw aging as just like this pathology, and old people are depressed and they're anxious, and aging is just this curse on all of us. And then they actually started doing research on people who are aging, and they're like, no, actually, most older people are less anxious.
Yeah.
They're more content than younger people. They're not as future oriented, but they're not stuck in the past either. They're actually just more capable of being in the present and finding joy in the present, which are all the things that, these days we say we want. And some of it is as your life goes on and your timeline gets shorter and you go, okay, I don't know how long the Lord has me here, but I know it's not 80 more years, it might not be 40 more years. That gives you a mental clarity about what is worth getting frustrated about, or what's worth pursuing and what isn't, what really matters and what doesn't. And so that's a natural clarifying thing. So I don't know what it is. I'm grateful that today I'm in a different place, and I want to thank you for just all your help and mentorship. This is proof of what a great mentor you are. That helped me kind of get over that crisis moment. And now I'm still thinking like the demands of my job, and even to do this job well, I don't know that I could serve this church well until the age of 67.
Sure.
I think I'm doing a good job now, and I have some renewed passion for it. But now it's like almost like I was in this crisis moment. I got to do something now, and by paying attention to it, I chilled out a little bit. I got a longer horizon, and so now I'm trying to figure out in this less panicky, more prayerful way, like what does the rest of my technical working life look like, and what does it look like to live a life of purpose beyond that, and how do I begin to explore that and step into that now? And so I just say that as a testimony for anyone who's maybe not as methodical and as disciplined as you and has the long horizon. If you're in that place where you just feel like you're drowning, maybe there's something you have to do right now to make a change. But maybe those changes can be just to start to learn about this stuff, to do the discovery, the exploration, to figure out what in you might need to start to change and you can let go of. And I think I'm a different kind of leader today than I was 3 years ago or 4 years ago. And that's probably been better for the people that I lead, and also better for me.
Well, and honestly, you wouldn't be here but for the adversity, right? Like it changed you,
that's right,
in this case for the better. And I think that's true at any life age. And I can again talk about my professional career. I don't remember the number, but I worked for 9 or 10 different companies. Not all of them were great. I made a few missteps along the way, and you just got to kind of write it out, so that it might be 2-3 years of a job that I really didn't like with people I really didn't respect. But you just kind of put in your time and you move. But so you can take risks along the way, and nothing has to be permanent. And, it's always that faith that you fall back on. And I Doug Moss always asks me, we're both Enneagram 5s. And so we have this abundance of fear. And he's like, how in the world, as an Enneagram 5, did you handle all these transitions? And it's because I learned how to transition. I created a process for transitioning. And so I just ran the process. And so you can, whatever your personality type, it's kind of figure out what that comfort is, and don't lose your mind if you happen to make a misstep. And sometimes those journeys through adversity and through the valley are when you realize that Jesus is right beside you. And this is, I don't know where this is going to take me, but it's going to shape me in a way I never could have shaped myself. And God's in control, and he's going to do something magnificent with it at some point. It just may not be your timeline.
Yeah. And the not my timeline thing was kind of hard for me to deal with at first, and probably still is, but also recognizing that I wasn't ready. Like, what am I going to quit my job and go try to figure out? Like, no, that sounds disastrous. Like, I'm not ready for what's next. I haven't done the work yet.
Right.
And so it gave me some kind of renewed purpose in the season to go, well, I've got really meaningful work, and it's I'm enjoying as much now as I ever have.
Yeah.
And I think some of the planning for whatever could be next, and I don't have any plans because I'm not there yet, but just even the process of discovery is really energizing.
Yeah, right. It is.
It gives me a lot of joy and energy for everything else in life.
Yeah, it's fun just to research it, to do some of the reading, and just to contemplate it and be patient with yourself and know that it might take a little while. Maybe you figure it out quickly. I certainly didn't.
Yeah.
And there's a great, I don't remember who said it, but there's a great quote that, God doesn't call you when it's time, or God doesn't call you when you're ready. He calls you when it's time. And even to my step, like I say, I don't know that I would have taken the step on my own. I had to be pushed. I got severed, and then it's like, okay. And then the job just fell in my lap. So, you just never know. You never know.
Yeah, and I think that's a testimony to God's faithfulness, and sometimes he just does that in spite of us. And I think that's also, in your story, a testimony to God's faithfulness along the way, that you really were being led by the Spirit.
Yeah.
And probably in ways beyond, at the time you recognized the Spirit's voice, I think it was maybe, but the Spirit was guiding you through that whole process. And that gives me a lot of courage, or just a lot of encouragement rather, to go, hey, God loves me, and he has purposes for me to live out on this earth. And he also wants me to live a life of purpose for my own sake, because there's a lot of joy in that.
Yeah.
And if I just keep trusting him and listening and being open, he will direct my steps.
That's right. And not a single one of us ever would have chosen the, controversy and adversity that hit for you a few years ago. And we all were praying that it would end immediately. But I'm happy to hear that, there was a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's, it's been for the better. It's made you stronger. Yeah.
And it really has.
Yeah.
Which at the time, if you would have told me that, I would have probably punched you in the arm or something. But God is good. There's there's just so much in Scripture about that, of God sometimes demolishing us, but to put us back together so that we're better.
That's right.
And not better in some sort of just moral way, but better in a way that it feels better.
Right.
You get to live freer and fuller. So before we're done, anything else that I haven't let you say, or anything else you want to say about the next generation? Because one of the things about you is, you mentioned this earlier, that you're a guy who's made me catch myself in some old curmudgeon kind of thinking about the next generation, because you just really delight in what you see in the next generation. And I mean, that includes every new generation.
Yeah.
There's something about you that's just, you have this like sense of wonder and, wow, isn't this great? And aren't they, like, you have so much hope when you look at coming generations. Has teaching changed that at all for you?
If anything, it's convicted me even further. Is, we as a society just keep stacking the odds against these younger people, whether it's home ownership or, the job market or climate change or, just list everything, right?
Tax structure is pretty regressive, and
we just seem to pile it up against them, and they are very resilient. They're, they certainly have their concerns, but I'm so hopeful. Like, as long as we don't continue to make the pile higher, they're absolutely going to figure this out and get us through some of the, the difficult situations. And they're smarter than we were. They're more technologically savvy. They work together as teams better than certainly my generation ever did.
Yeah.
And they've got this, they understand the importance of mental and emotional health. They're not afraid to talk about those things. There's much more equality. There's much more acceptance of, diverse ideas. And they're so well equipped that I'm ready to hand the baton and just, let the next generation take it over. And whether it's corporations, government, whatever it is, there's a lot to be optimistic about for sure.
Yeah, which goes back around to some of us in the older generations need to be willing to embrace our purpose for the season that we're in, so that we can make room for them to do good. There's like a double harm.
Right.
There's a harm to self, and there's also kind of this greater societal harm if we hold on past our season too long.
Right.
If we won't let things go.
Right. Right.
Well, that's so inspiring to hear you say, especially someone who's working now with college students, that it's only increased your hope.
Yeah.
And as people of faith, we're we are called. We are required to be people of hope. And it's hard to be sometimes, but we believe in a God who's always moving and always directing, and he's good. And I think even Christians sometimes get this wrong, where probably through some bad readings of Revelation or some of the prophets, our assumption is, and there's, a few verses that, talk about there are going to be terrible times and things are going to get worse. And there's this idea that like God is going to abandon us and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And while things externally may become challenging, for people of faith, we can always count on God leading us to better and closer and fuller revelation of himself and more peace and more joy and more hope.
Yeah.
And I think we're missing that as a society right now. There's just a lot of doom and gloom, and even amongst Christians.
Yeah.
Whether it's the next generation or whether it's just what the future holds.
I think I sent you at one point a few years ago a TED Talk. I think the guy's name was Hans Rosling. It was Factfulness or something like that. And he starts debunking all these myths about things getting worse. And so, I remember one of the things was women who are educated. And, he said, you look back a handful of years, decades ago, and a large portion of women around the globe did not have access to higher education. And now you look at that number and it's a lot less. And I think it started with a shark attack. He's a Swedish guy. And
okay, that sounds familiar now.
Yeah, some Swede was vacationing in Australia, got attacked by a shark, and so the Swedes just all freaked out about shark attacks. And he said your chances of winning the lottery like 3 times over is about the same as getting attacked by a shark. It was some ridiculous statistic. But yeah, quantitatively, there are things that are getting worse. Like the severe weather events is truly terrifying, right?
Yeah, here in St. Louis, just a horrible tornado.
Oh yeah,
just through the city, and
absolutely,
and just the number of tornadoes we've had this year. There's something going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And but anyway, you're on the whole. There's still a lot of opportunity for improvement, but on the whole, things are definitely getting better.
Yeah. Praise God for that.
Yeah.
Well, Scott, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks for what you're doing for the next generation. Thanks for what you're doing for, you and I are, I think, technically the same generation. I'm a young Gen Xer, and I think you're
I am dead center Gen X. Yeah. So any of the traits about Gen X, that's me. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say I grew up poor, so I'm like a generation behind. So like pop culture, I didn't know any of that stuff. So yeah, I'm pretty squarely Gen X. So even what you're doing for, people in your generational cohort, it's you're truly a gift, and thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. For those of you who are still with us, thanks for joining us. If this is great content that would help someone else, make sure you share it. Also, if you want to find more episodes, or if you want to take our free whole life assessment, you can go to ippodcast.org and find all kinds of stuff. Until then, keep pursuing a whole life.